Over the course of several streams, I played a Fire Emblem Fates Revelation Lunatic difficulty Iron Man, and then threw it all away on a coin flip at the last possible moment. I had a fairly easy time of things, despite it being the first time I played the Revelation in its entirety. So, to make things more difficult, I began my next attempt as an Iron Man and a KMU, or Kill My Unit challenge. I will be unable to reload saves, and YouTube users will be allowed to kill off my characters live on stream by super chatting a bounty for their life. When the bounty is paid for, their character will be marked for death, and will be killed off once they are recruited, or more promptly if they are already on the team. If the run fails, I will restart from the beginning with all of the dead characters revived, but bounties for characters who have not yet died will carry over for the next one. For my first Revelation Iron Man KMU attempt, I create a male avatar called Causation with an plus HP boon, minus luck bane, and an Oni Savage talent. My intention is to make a build that utilizes the counter skill. I organize the bounties into a tier system to make various characters more or less expensive. I have previously assigned these tiers based on a character's perceived utility to the success of the run, but this is a lot of work considering that Revelation has an absolutely massive cast size. Instead, I assign every character randomly, allowing for some very good characters to be very cheap and some very bad ones to be expensive. I decide the prices based off of a chat poll, and then randomly divvy out 43 characters amongst the tiers. I leave optional characters like the amiibo units and Anna off the board until they are recruited, and Scarlet also has no bounty because she automatically dies in chapter 18. Corrin, of course, as the main character, remains off limits. With the chart now neatly organized, I open the floodgates, and almost immediately, before anything has really happened, 17 bounties have been fulfilled. In Chapter 6, the first chapter of the Revelation route, I only have 3 characters: Corrin, Azura, and Felicia. Azura is a strong unit because of her capabilities as a singer to refresh actions, and as a combat unit because I granted her to level 36 by dancing for 2100 turns before the route split. Felicia is also good because she can obtain promoted level 15 skills much earlier than other characters. In other words, it is basically a matter of fact that they are killed off first. Also killed off is nearly the entirety of C tier because they're cheap, nearly all of the royals because they're generally good, and many other early game characters to limit my options. The first map of Revelations puts you on a strict timer, so strict in fact that I lose and get a game over because of it. I am reasonably sure that it is pretty much impossible to beat Revelation's first map with only Corrin and no pair-ups, unless you have a very specific build and either get lucky with level ups in the prologue or Dragonfang activations in the map. Since I don't want to limit my build choices because of this one map, I decide that this failure doesn't count, and to give myself a small allowance to use my 2 other characters in this introductory map. I send Corrin across the river to fight the Cavalier boss, and Azura to the right to defeat the Samurai boss, after which she attacks into the Hoshidan Royals for an honorable death. I continue through Chapter 7, which has been reduced to a Corrin solo as a result of additional chat gunfire. Felicia, the maid, dies, officially making Corrin maidenless. Gunter is also shot to death with high caliber donation bullets, but I'm able to trudge through with the help of healing forts. I enter Chapter 8 with only Corrin alive and depend on Dragonfang healing tiles to survive. Next up is Chapter 9, the Revelation version of Fuga's Wild Ride. Emboldened by the flame of ambition, 5 characters join the team, but Sakura, Hana, Tsubaki, and Kaze are already dead by the grace of bloodthirsty viewers who wish to extinguish my flame. Fortunately, Rinka's characteristics of being a shit unit and having an expensive bounty in this run has allowed her to survive. Rinka, as a pair-up bot, grants Corrin extra defense and protects him from dual strikes, which is enough to get me through most of the map. Corrin gets blown every which way by the wind, but I manage to reach Fuga, who I figure will be trivial to beat. I decide to leave him until later. One of the chests on this map has 10,000 gold, which is too good to pass up, but on my way to the treasure, confident in my victory because physical enemies can't hurt me, I use the fast forward function on my emulator and lower my guard, which allows several enemy diviners to get the jump on me and kill me with magic damage, ending the first run of this Revelation KMU. I start my second attempt of this Revelation KMU, re-rolling the price tiers of dead characters randomly, The new avatar is a female core named Conscript with a plus magic boon, minus luck bane, and a diviner talent. I finished chapter 6 and then do chapter 7 where Azura and Gunter die, and finish chapter 8 with Jacob still alive. I grab Mozu from the paralog to bolster my roster, and I use a heart seal to class change Jacob into a paladin, resulting in his death by bounty. Sakura is also killed by chat to deny me the use of a healer. I have made it into chapter 9 this time with a much more intact squad, but I have also severely underestimated the wild ride of Fuga. Because of my poor positioning, Rinka and Kaze die for free. Korn gets surrounded, and to save her, I sacrifice Mozu and Tsubaki for free. I am left with only Hana and Korn left to defeat Fuga. I use a Dread Scroll to give Hana usable base stats, and I fight Fuga with Korn, but I appear to have underrated his ability. Fuga has a truckload of avoid because of his positioning on the fort, his personal skill Wind Disciple, and Duelist Blow. The Seal's strength also makes physical damage unusable, and the fort heals over 8 HP per turn. I try attacking with a Dragonstone, but I at best have a 60 to 70% hit rate on player phase and 30 to 40% on enemy phase, resulting in a very large number of dodges that takes a severe toll on my healing resources. Since Sakura was shot dead by Super Chat, and my lack of foresight has left me with very few vulneraries, Fuga wears me down by sheer attrition. I am unable to take free shots at Fuga from 2 range simply because I don't have any weapons I can use in the convoy. I completely run out of healing, but I reduce Fuga to 1 HP, giving me an opportunity to defeat him. 2 54% hits for Korn and 136% for Hana. Korn activates Dragon Fang but misses, and then Hana misses, and then Korn misses again. That's fine, because I still have one more chance, and I send in Hana for another 36% hit, which she misses as well. Fuga hits her with Vantage and then kills her with a crit. Korn now only has 2 HP and will die to Fuga's Vantage skill if she attacks, so I allow Fuga to heal past half health to disable this ability. Then finally, I send in Korn for one last hurrah with a 54% hit chance. If I get a Dragon Fang activation, a roughly 13.5% chance of occurring if I hit, then I can defeat Fuga and beat the map. Korn strikes Fuga but doesn't activate Dragon Fang and dies from the retaliation, ending the second run of this Revelation KMU. The third avatar I create for this Revelation KMU is named Kamui, playing on the similarity between the acronym KMU and Korn's Japanese name Kamui. I am tired of making decisions, and so my next build is random. I shuffle the boons, banes, and talents and come up with a plus strength minus speed troubadour. I reassign the dead characters, and as is tradition, Felicia and Azura die instantly. As I play chapter 7, Gunter's bounty slowly ticks up, and I race to finish the map before he is killed, managing to beat the boss right before his bounty completes. This marks the beginnings of a new meta strategy that I later adopt, where I intentionally play much faster to accumulate characters more quickly than they die. Chapter 8 is another solo, and unfortunately history repeats itself, as all 5 characters I gained from chapter 9 are killed for money before I can use any of them. This raises the uncomfortable problem of fighting all of chapter 9 and Fuga with only Korn. This time, however, I'm prepared. I buy tonics, 12 vulneraries, 3 concoctions, and a Kodachi throwing sword to cheese Fuga. I ignore most of the grunts as they grant Korn very little XP, and I make it to the boss with surprising ease. I try to cheese Fuga from outside his range with a Kodachi, but Korn's damage output is not enough to even hurt him. After Seal Strength activates, assuming that I hit, Korn only does 8 damage a turn to Fuga, and Fuga heals 8 damage a turn for the fort, resulting in a net change of 0 HP. I managed to get a lucky strength level up, but it still puts me at a net 1 damage per turn with a 56% hit rate. In order to kill him with this method, I'll have to hit him 34 times in a row, which has a roughly 1 in 364 million chance of success. Just like the odds of intelligent systems releasing a new mainline Fire Emblem game uncorrupted by visual novel influence, it is probabilistically impossible that it will happen before I go insane or die from old age. I need to find a different method, which just ends up being attacking with a Yato and hoping I get lucky. Korn only has a 56% hit with the Yato, but he still somehow doubles Fuga despite having his speed bane. If Fuga swaps to his Iron Naginata, then the weapon triangle disadvantage makes things even worse. I will do less damage, and my hit rate will go down to 46% on player phase, and 16% on enemy phase because of Duelist Blow. These odds are still pretty bad, and my supply of healing items, while large, is not infinite, but I have no choice but to gamble on these slim hopes. I attack, and luckily proc Dragon Fang on the first strike, and land the second blow as well. The map gimmicks winds blow Korn away, and stop Fuga from switching to his Naginata, allowing me to retain my good hit rates. I heal up so Fuga won't kill me if I miss, and attack again, landing another 2 56% hits for the kill. I emerge from Chapter 9 victorious, only to realize I have gone out of the frying pan and into the fire, as my repeated failures have allowed bounties to accumulate, leaving me 0 living characters for Chapter 10 as well. In Fire Emblem Fates, you can purchase an infinite number of generic Untitled units for 1500 gold a pop in my castle. These characters come aboard at level 1 with generic unit growth rates, and are generally considered to be pretty bad overall because of their low base stats and their lack of alternate class sets or supports. There should be no reason to use them if you have any living characters, but well, this is a special case. You can only build the Untitled shop starting in Chapter 11, and since I am on Chapter 10, I instead buy one from the unit logbook for twice the price because I desperately need more units. I recruit the generic level 1 archer Jotaro and train him for level 10 in Mozu's map, where I kill off Mozu and Hayato because of their bounty. I class change him into a ballistician using the free item I get from one of the Anna DLCs, and then begin the snow shoveling map of Chapter 10. Since the risk of uncovering and fighting several enemies at once is dangerous and can possibly end the run, I decide to forego getting all of the staff boosters and decide to go straight for the boss. While the ballistician's launcher cannot kill enemies, it can do chip damage at extreme range. Since Zola and his cronies are visible but separated from us by a wall, I have Jotaro use ballistician sheaves to chip them all down to 1 HP, allowing me to mop them up easily. After beating the map, I sell many of my now useless, userless weapons and use a gold to buy 3 more Jotaros. Next up is Chapter 11, the Ninja Forest map, where I would normally have 6 new characters, but I can't use any of them to fight because of contractual obligations. I make the executive decision to put Jotaro and other generics into the no tier of bounties, so viewers cannot pay to kill them. My rationale for this is that I think it's more interesting, because the alternative is doing a Corrin solo where I just lay down and die. Plus, I think it's funny. Anyway, I start the map and Orochi dies on turn 1, Takumi the royal pineapple gets diced, and Reina as a green unit goes straight to the boss in an attempt to slay Kotaro all by herself, but she dies in the process. I recruit Saizo and use him, Hinata, and Oboro as meat shields against aggressive enemies from the left, which I then pick apart using Corrin and his squad of Jotaros. Sadly, there are too many of them and I lose 2 brave archers in the process. I reclass Corrin into a Dread Fighter and a Jotaro into a Dark Flyer, and use Ballistician Jotaro to chip all of the remaining Master Ninjas down to 1 HP so I can take them down with ease. I defeat Kotaro and route to end the map. For my glorious victory, I'm rewarded with the recruitment of the ninja Kagero, who is somehow still alive. I finally get around to constructing the Untitled shop to buy additional generics at their normal price, and purchase 5 more Jotaros to bolster my roster. As I do my preparations for the next map, Kagero is killed by the chat for obvious reasons. I enter Chapter 12, the boat map, and decide to skip it by killing the boss, since the only character I have that can fight worth a damn is Corrin. The Jotaros, while spiritually strong, are physically weak. Normally, you can beat this chapter by deploying Reina on the right and going straight for the boss, but because Reina is dead and Corrin's deployment location cannot be changed, I can't do this. I start on the left boat far away from the boss, and I am unable to fly my characters across the frozen sea immediately because archers will shoot me down. As a result, I get cornered and 4 Jotaros die for this tactical failure. However, after this, I manage to sneak through the enemy archers and get over to the right side of the map. I fly Corrin right up to Flora and manage to score an exact kill. This completes the map, and I sense that maybe, just maybe, my viewers' wallets have been sufficiently depleted to finally allow me to have some actual characters. Next up is Chapter 13, the Obstacle map, where 5 characters join the team. Baruka, Kaden, and Camilla shuffle off this monetary coil immediately, but Selena and Keaton are spared. I try to train Selena, but accidentally get her killed while trying to do so. I have no money left, and I cannot buy more Jotaros, so training the squad now feels rather pointless, so I decide to skip this map as well. I have Corrin fly over the enemies, and place an obstacle at the path to the boss area to stop enemies from attacking from the rear.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
This gives me freedom to kill the boss without outside interference. So far, my attempts to build an army have been thwarted by money and also my own personal incompetence. Since most of the remaining living characters that can be recruited are complete arse, and arrive very underleveled, I figured that I must attempt some optional recruitments, namely that of Anna and the 4 amiibo characters. At this moment, Corrin is fairly strong and can more or less solo many of the recruitment chapters. I roll through Anna's map and recruit Anna, who joins the team as a level 10 outlaw and leaves in a body bag. I then do Robin's map, which is the easiest amiibo chapter, and then Ike's with more or less no difficulty. I then play Marth's chapter, which is trickier because all of the enemies move as a group. I use one Jotaro as bait, but soon find myself in a sticky situation because I cannot defeat all of the threats cleanly. Marth's falchion can potentially one-shot Korin, so I prioritize taking him down over the survival of my squad. Marth is defeated and I avoid complete disaster, but I suffer heavy losses losing Robin and my best Jotaro, the one that is a ballistician and also the only one that is actually trained. Lucina's chapter goes fairly smoothly though, giving me 3 new characters to work with in total. I make steady progress through the game, recruiting many characters along the way in story chapters. Chapter 14 alone grants me 6 bodies to work with. Chad flares up an outrage over Jotaro's untimely death and kills Marth in retaliation. So far, I have been unable to get any characters off the ground, but for now, I can take care of most chapters as a Korin solo. However, the difficulty of the Revelation route is heavily backloaded. In the first half of the game, you mostly fight unpromoted enemies and receive many powerful pre-promotes. The real challenge will arrive in the Valor chapters, where the enemy quality and strength will increase drastically, with nearly every enemy being promoted and having very high stats. Anyway, Effie is recruited and dies, Elise recruits Charlotte and Benny and then dies, Silas dies, and then I try to make Charlotte more useful as a staff fob by reclassing her into a Troubadour, but chat doesn't want me to have any healers, so she dies. I then move on to the Rainbow Stage map, where Nyx, one of the worst units of Revelation, is killed, but Shura, one of the best, is spared because the stream ended before people could kill him. In Chapter 16, 6 characters join the team, and I immediately send 4 of them to their deaths. Ryoma dies, making the rest of the game much more interesting, since he can't solo the game in a coffin. Then Hinoka dies, then Azama. Jacob joined at the end of the last map and can use staffs, so of course Chad also kills him off. The 2 remaining are Setsuna, an archer who has a lower strength growth than the generic archer Jotaro, and Scarlet, who dies in the cutscene at the start of Chapter 18 and has no real room to contribute in a normal run. However, she is pretty useful here for some extra disposable muscle since I cannot use Ryoma. Because Scarlet will already die, I choose not to have a bounty for her. I don't even bother trying to gain XP on this map, and instead try to desperately rush towards the boss to complete as fast as possible. I end up sacrificing Setsuna in the process without being paid. It's also been nearly a week in real time between now and the previous chapter, and people have not forgotten about Shura's survival. In fact, I believe several people made sure to tune in specifically to witness his death or to have the opportunity to do it themselves. I make it to Hans and defeat him, but the fun doesn't end here. The chapter then continues directly into Chapter 17 to reduce the probability of you ranking up a support with Scarlet and getting attached to her before she is unceremoniously killed in a pathetically inept attempt at adding intrigue to the plot. In Chapter 17, Xander, Leo, Odin, Niles, Laszlo, and Perry are all recruited directly onto the Great Bench in the Sky to satisfy long-standing debts. Because I haven't trained them, the few characters I have left are unable to defend themselves on this fairly difficult map, and Arthur, Ike, and Benny all die for free. I managed to complete the map with only Lucina and Scarlet left alive. In the intermissions between Chapters 17 and 18, I decided to grind support rank between Korin and Scarlet in order to marry her and produce a child super soldier. However, as I play skirmish maps, Lucina gets hit by a hexing rod and is killed by some random ass enemy. I achieve an S-rank support between Scarlet and Korin and have them wed in holy matrimony. As she exchanges vows with our barefooted protagonist, Scarlet declares that she will spend the rest of her life with Korin. If only she knew just how right she'd be. Scarlet and Korin speedrun having a child and then throw her into the easy bake oven to create a fully trained killer in a rough time span of around 5 minutes. Connor's recruitment chapter scales and can be rather difficult if you do it later in the story, but right now it's very easy and I have Korin steamroll the map. I enter Chapter 18 and in the opening cutscene, Scarlet comments that Korin, her husband, is special, but not as special as Ryoma. What the fuck? Suddenly, out of nowhere, Scarlet suffers from an acute case of fireball poisoning. Scarlet dies, and Korin's main priority is to ponder out loud about what he will say to Ryoma about his wife's death, in a dialogue scene that is completely unchanged by Korin's marital status. Korin easily slaughters the entire map by abusing a choke point, with Kana healing from a distance using a Festal, and 2 Jotaros acting as parapods. The map is cleared, but what is also clear is the outcome of this run, given that every single normal character is gone. I enter Chapter 19 with Corrin, confident in my ability to slow the rest of the game because Corrin is a powerful dread fighter that can use shurikens and has the soul skill for self-healing. On turn 1, I have Corrin activate Dragonbane to clone himself on the bottom of the map. Then, Corrin gets attacked by 5 enemies and dies. Well, as it turns out, the enemies do too much damage to tank and have too much defense to heal off of using soul activations. This concludes the third Revelation KMU attempt, and while my play was not perfect, it is a clear case study as to why Corrin's solos are not particularly viable in this route. Despite my recent defeat, I managed to make considerable progress towards cleaning the bounty board. Since the vast majority of the cast died, they will come back to life in this run with their bounties refreshed and reassigned. I take some time to roll dice and give every character except Flora and Fuga a new bounty. I now have a clean slate to defile, and the 4th avatar I create for this Revelation KMU is a male Corrin named Croatia with a plus luck, minus defense stat line, and a monk talent. My intention is to mess around with the miracle skill and to see how far I can get with one of the worst builds imaginable. I commit even further and reclass Corrin with a heart seal immediately to become a monk, a class that can only wield staves and has 0 offensive capability. I get through the early chapters by blackmailing my audience into temporarily sparing Felicia for a few chapters, because with her dead, Corrin would die instantly, ending the run prematurely. This is undesirable mainly because I can just start again, and more importantly, it's boring. Along the way, I lose Azura and a bunch of other characters, but still have a decent number of units remaining. However, since most early Revelation characters are hot garbage, playing with a Corrin that cannot attack, while funny, is a tactical non-starter. As a result, I decided to make a compromise and early promote Corrin into a Great Master at level 12, sacrificing future potential to survive in the moment. In Chapter 9, I use Ebon Wings to create Dark Flyers and go straight for Fuga. I've managed to train Felicia into a pretty competent dread fighter, but she is killed by Fuga's goons. Undaunted by this loss, I kill Fuga by repeatedly shooting him from 2 range for low amounts of damage over and over until he finally goes down. I clear all of the snow in Chapter 10 and grab all the treasures that I can. I sell much of it to go to the Inheritor shop to buy a Mega Jotaro that I maxed out off stream by using a logbook updating exploit. I decided this will be the only time that I try this, because I was curious about the performance of a maxed out Jotaro, and I figured that the run is dead anyway. I promote him into a Kinshi Knight and he clears the Ninja Forest map easily, and then move on to the Bolt map where my entire squad except Corrin and Jotaro die, so I desperately attempt to end the map by killing the boss. While Corrin is way too weak to do the job, Jotaro might be able to succeed. If I can double Flora, I have exactly enough damage to defeat her, but I find that Jotaro is exactly 1 point of speed short. If I had a speed tonic, I could pull it off, but I don't. There are several other things I could have tried, but I figure that the best way out is a lucky speed level up to meet the threshold. I retreat to the left to see if there's any easy XP to get, but I am pursued by several dozen enemies and get surrounded. I dance around like a cornered rat for several turns before an opportunity to break out arises. I thread the needle and fly into the gap, where Jotaro is attacked multiple times and dies. Corrin follows him into the grave shortly afterwards, ending the 4th attempt of this Revelation KMU. For the 5th attempt of this Revelation KMU, I decided to go for a high-risk, high-reward strategy. I create a female avatar named Carthage with a plus magic minus luck stat line and a ninja talent. I pair Corrin with Jacob and build supports early to make Jacob into a Master Ninja and pass down the Shuriken Fair skill to Kana and Dwyer as soon as possible to get a sizable early game power boost. I make it through the early chapters just fine, but every single character is once again taken from me by donations. Dwyer's map is only easy to skip if you have more than one character, so I put it aside and try Kana's map, where Kana as a green unit has very high stats even in early chapters. I figured that maybe I could get him to solve the map for me. However, this ends up being too much to ask for, as Kana is taken down by a Swordmaster and Corrin is sniped by a Falcon Knight, smothering the 5th attempt of this Revelation KMU in its crib. For the 6th attempt of this Revelation KMU, I decided to try the early Kana strat again, this time with a male avatar named Correct, a plus strength minus luck ninja. Felicia's natural class set allows her to reclass into a hero and obtain the soul skill at level 5. which I can then pass down to Kana immediately and hopefully give her enough sustain to solo her joining chapter as a green unit. I enter chapter 7 and Azura, naturally, already has a bounty. She managed to dodge a boss several dozen times before going down for a critical hit, after which I attack with Korin. The boss immediately lands another critical hit and instantly kills him, ending the run only 10 minutes after it started. The 7th attempt of this Revelation KMU goes how you might expect. I do my best to make progress, but any success is met with an endless series of super chats, collapsing any long-term planning. I try to salvage the run by soloing with a Master Ninja Korin, but this is insufficient and I die in chapter 21. At this point, I have realized that chat is not going to run out of money and that I cannot beat the game with only Korin, since complicated builds are too difficult to obtain. Something needs to change. Quirky, named characters with personalities have done nothing but fail me again and again. What I need instead is Jotaro. By the 8th attempt of my Revelation KMU, I have decided to stop messing around and make one of the most try-hard Korin builds that I can. I create a male avatar named Jotaro that has a plus magic minus luck stat line and a dark mage challenge so I can use Nosferatu. While I won't be able to sweep entire maps because I cannot depend on getting enough damage skills, this is the best option for reliably increasing Korin's durability. My previous use of generic Einherjar units has been to use them as disposable pawns, but this time I operate on a different philosophy. I will use them more like growth units, since I want to depend on real characters as little as possible. In addition to being a meme, Jotaro specifically has the most potential of all generics in the Revelation route because of his surprisingly high strength and speed growth rates, excellent skill selection, and the plethora of high utility bows in this route, such as the Crescent Bow, the 3-range Spies Yumi, and the S-rank legendary weapon Pursuer. I buy a fresh 3000 gold Jotaro from the logbook and use all of chapter 7 to train him, getting to level 11 and obtaining the quick draw skill. Of course, the super chats have still not let up, resulting in Azura and Gunter's demise in accordance with tradition. I purchased a generic ninja and Einherjar from the logbook, so I have a guaranteed lockpicker, and enter chapter 8 where I train the generic ninja Goro. I play Mosu's map, but unfortunately Mosu is already dead, so all I get out of it is some XP. Chat is rather lethargic this run, so I am able to enter chapter 9 with a lot of characters, but in accordance with my strategy, I don't really train any of them, instead focusing my XP into Einherjars. I use a Master Seal to early promote Jotaro at level 12 into a sniper, giving him surprisingly formidable stats due to the significant promotion bonuses. Additionally, by promoting early, his internal level will be lower, allowing him to reach level 5 and 15 sniper skills more quickly. I rush to defeat Fuga in chapter 9, and in my haste, Rinka is killed by Samurai, and Hana is one-shot by Fuga. Whoops. Tsubaki gets bountied, and then I clear the map and defeat Fuga with Felicia, who I have class changed into a strategist, so I can use Inspiration and Demo Zeal to buff my generic units. I figure that if I create a narrative where I have named characters become the supporting cast for the generic ones, I can get more use out of them as viewers will be less inclined to kill them. I clear the snow map for all of the loot before a curious thing happens. One person role-playing as the generic ninja Goro super chatted to kill Kaze, a strange occurrence, but I don't think it will happen again. Sakura has also been overdue for a bullet and she dies. I decide to build my army by continuing to purchase more generic Einherjar units, and recruit the generic Wyvern Rider Octu, the generic Sky Knight Kotoe, and the generic Troubadour Trim. I enter chapter 11 and a lot of characters end up dying primarily by bounty. But that's okay, I don't need them. Oboro dies, then Hayato, then Felicia. As it turns out, my psychological tactics for keeping characters alive have backfired, as any amount of investment or attention is enough to attract bullets. Takumi dies, and then so does Hinata. But two of the most important characters are left alive, namely Orochi, who can capture generic enemies, and Reina, who is a strong pre-promote that most importantly can easily carry me to chapter 12. As I prepare for the next map, I observe an increasing number of generic unit role players in the chat, and one enterprising fellow has even written Jotaro lore, which I play for everyone using text-to-speech software.
The Jotaro religions can be divided into two major factions, the Jotaroists and the Takumists.
I promote Orochi into a witch using the free class change item and enter chapter 12. I could hypothetically skip the map just by using Reina, but I need more power and try to capture some generics. Kakuro is recruited and dies, and then I find my way through the tide of enemies in a relatively normal fashion. As the map concludes, I am faced with a difficult decision. My prison only has 2 slots, so I must decide which of the captured generics have the best names, a choice that will have more impact on the game than any Fire Emblem dialogue option. My final picks end up being a berserker named Virgil and a sorcerer named Theobald. To conclude the map, I try to set up the boss kill for Jotaro, but Korin steals the glory by critting Flora. In chapter 13, Kaden and Camilla die, but that was to be expected. This is the last map for this particular stream, so I end for the day. The next time I start up, it is chapter 14, and the number of people roleplaying as generic Fates and Harriers has increased dramatically, to the point where it has become eminently uncomfortable. In fact, no matter where you pause the video, odds are you'll see at least one, if not several role-playing messages in the chat box. Anyway, while the pre-promoted Jotaro from the previous chapters has performed well, I worry that long-term performance will be lacking, so I decided to train another one. This time, for my generic archers, I am going for quality over quantity, as I have plenty of named unit cannon fodder to work with. I have recruited the berserker Virgil and the sorcerer Theobald to the team, and they are quite good, especially in comparison to the useless characters Saizo, Elise, and Charlotte, who all go straight into the bin.
Know your fucking place, trash.
I have managed to capture Leonard the Paladin and Bertram the General, and they are welcome additions to the team. Unfortunately, the number of generic enemies that you can capture in the Revelation Route story chapters is actually quite limited. You can only capture units in 6 chapters total under normal circumstances, being chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, and 17. You cannot capture Violent Soldiers, so you are cut off once you enter Vala in chapter 18. Chapters 16 and 17 are also a unique combined chapter, meaning that you cannot recruit characters in the intermission to empty your prison. You should be able to capture a total of 12 units, but I've already missed out on 4, since the ones I got in chapter 11 were garbage, and I did not capture in chapter 13. Hilariously, you cannot capture any units in chapter 15 because all of the enemies are illusions. I recruit Shura, but chat gives him the boot. Please pretend this isn't the 5th time I made this joke. I mainly use this map as an opportunity to grind XP, and I decided to train Benny and Bertram, as having characters with high defense will be invaluable for walling off enemies and feeding XP into my Inherior units. I have promoted Korin into a sorcerer and use him as a Nosferatu tank. Unfortunately, his damage output is not enough to one-shot Revelation's bulky promoted enemies, so he'll be unable to sweep entire maps like in Conquest. However, he can take hits at choke points, which is good enough. Sorcerers have a very low luck cap, and alongside Korin's minus luck bane, his luck caps out at 23, meaning that any berserkers in chapter 16 have a crit chance on him, so I risk instant death if I face them. But it's not like I have any other options. Orochi has been targeted by a bounty, so I can't use her to capture on this map, and I must get my 4 remaining captures on chapter 17 with Niles. Ryoma dies to a bounty, and my plan is to go for the boss early, but halfway through I changed my mind and tried to farm the map for XP. Because of my indecision, however, I get surrounded and forced into a disorganized retreat, losing Hanoka for free and Scarlet before she dies in the cutscene. My path leads me directly into a reinforcement zone, and I literally get surrounded by the reinforcements. Are you fucking kidding me? Did I just get surrounded by reinforcements? Motherfucker. I somehow managed to disentangle myself from the situation with some tricky movement and a lucky miracle activation and a dodge from Azama. Finally, I managed to stabilize and mop up the rest of the map for some precious XP for a Jotaro, who I trained to level 20 and promote into a sniper. Chapter 17 is a decently challenging map, especially if, like me, you are not allowed to use good characters because of various circumstances. Xander, Leo, and Perry died to bounties, but for the first time in a long while, my barracks has too many characters, and I am simply unable to deploy everybody that I want to. So some bounty candidates must remain on the bench until the situation quiets down. Korin not being quite strong enough to one-shot enemies actually plays to my advantage, as it allows me to feed kills much more easily. I fight my way down the right side of the map and then go for a full clear to optimize my gains. I go through great pains to have Niles captured to fill my prison, and for my final quarry, I wind up capturing a Dark Knight, a Great Knight, and 2 Bow Knights, who are all pretty good units, I must say. I then quickly pop into the Meeple and DLC map to recruit Marth, Ike, Lucina, Robert, and Anna. This concludes the recruitment of units for the most part, generic or otherwise, and the rest of the run will be built on this foundation. I make my third foray into Vala, the hidden kingdom underneath the bottomless canyon. And Scarlet dies again as scheduled. Chapter 18 is one of the big difficulty spikes in Revelation because every enemy is now promoted, but at the same time it is a great opportunity to get XP because there's like 70 enemies and multiple one-tile choke points that you can abuse. I take this opportunity to its fullest to get as much XP and weapon XP as possible. I want to level up Jotaro and also get a very high weapon rank so he can use the Spy's Yumi, a 3-range bow that you can get 2 of in this route, and the Pursuer, which is an extremely powerful S-rank legendary weapon. Marth, Ike, Anna, and Silas die from bounties, but Korin does a good job of warding off enemies at the choke point and giving XP to more worthy characters. I additionally try to use Setsuna as some kind of generic character that has a name and a portrait, and then manage to get her to level 20. Her stats are about on par with a typical Jotaro. Next up is Chapter 19 of Revelation, which is another fairly brutal map with a low amount of deployment slots, so I need all hands on deck. I promote Setsuna into a sniper, but she's not good enough for a deployment slot, so I deploy Jotaro instead. This map lets you replicate your units and allows you to either complete the map faster by escaping in the top half or obtain more rewards by clearing the bottom half of the map. Obviously, I try to get as much loot as I can. However, because I lack confidence in the strength of my army, I move much more conservatively and I'm unable to get all of the treasure. But at the same time, I also suffer no casualties. And that's a good thing. We enter Chapter 20, and it's a moving platform gimmick map, of which there are many in the Vala arc of Revelation. We have the opportunity to obtain the first legendary weapon in the game, which is the S-rank Naginata water wheel, which is also completely useless because only Spearmasters can use it. Since all possible named Spearmasters are dead, and we don't have time for a fresh and hairier Spearfighter to attack 300 or so times to gain S-rank lances, the only utility that this shitty piece of class-locked garbage has for me is to sell it for 5,000 gold. I don't even think Revelation has any captured Spearmasters to begin with. We also have the opportunity to recruit Fuga and kill him off for all of the trouble that he's given me in earlier runs, and that's a bad thing because he's actually a very good unit. I buy the first Spy's Yumi from the level 3 Dawn Armory, which allows Jotaro to attack at 3 range, allowing me to avoid counterattacks from any normal enemy, while still doing plenty of damage with dual strikes. Even though I've been using Jotaro fairly consistently, I still only have a B rank in bows, so I used the arm scroll to get to A rank. Next up is Chapter 21, which is a stupid fucking gimmick map with red and blue floors, which actively encourages slow play, unless you really want the S-rank axe Argomir, which is honestly not a prize worth going for. While it does have 22 might, it's simply not very good because the brave axe exists and is better most of the time. I obtained it anyway since I do have a captured berserker on the team, Virgil, who is technically capable of using it. I start Chapter 22 where Setsuna is immediately hit by a bounty, allowing me to reuse a meme that I drew ages ago. Laszlo is also bountied and then dies. I overcommit my forces, resulting in multiple unintentional deaths, including Girl the generic Master Ninja, Lucina, and Robin. Eager to pounce on this opportunity, Chad starts killing off everyone and try to make me lose. Benny is killed, and Reina finally dies after like 10 chapters. Selena dies as well, and so does Jacob. Unfortunately, I also lose a good generic, Lander the Paladin, because of another blunder. As a nice aside to all of this death, I loot the legendary S-rank tome Excalibur, which can technically be useful, but is difficult to justify over Nosferatu or Lightning Tome for Korin. But Theobald, the generic sorcerer, can use it to patch up his shaky speed to some extent. Chapter 23 is another moving platform map, and Effie dies. Otto, the generic Dark Knight, is also one-rounded by an enemy Spearmaster, but I continue on and almost complete the map. Unfortunately, I get hit by a power outage in real life, resulting in the stream cutting off and me losing progress for the current chapter. I decide to restart with Effie and Otto still dead and keep going. I make a very ill-advised platform play and get Saving Private Ryan, losing Theobald the generic sorcerer and Virgil the generic berserker, the 2 S-rank weapon users I have so recently touted. I try again with just Korin and decide to just chance it. He just barely survives the onslaught of Nosferatu. I get a second Spy's Yumi for more 3-range goodness, and I also get the S-rank legendary Shuriken Chakram, which is useless to me because I will never be able to find a wielder for it. If I captured a Master Ninja in Chapter 11 or 13, then this could have worked out, but I wasn't planning that far ahead. I somehow forgot to mention this, but I also lost a Bull Knight to a Swordmaster Advantage crit. I sell Argomir and most of my axes because my only berserker is dead, forgetting that I can still get another one. I enter Kana's Paralogue, who is Korin and Felicia's child, Felicia having married Korin right before she died. Kana is nothing special, but she has the inspiration skill, which can be a nice buff. I find that Excalibur is actually quite good on Korin, as it gives him exceedingly high speed, double fast enemies like Swordmasters. I tried to recruit both of the captured Bandit brothers, but I accidentally crit and kill one of them. The other one I recruit with Niles at the cost of his life. Llewellyn is a capable berserker, but I have sold basically all of my axes, so he is kind of garbage now. Curses! The consequences of my own actions. Chapter 24 is a stealth map, meaning that I should be very quiet. The other gimmick is not even worth mentioning at this point. But as it turns out that no survivors means no witnesses, so I can go in with full force. One of the main reasons why Nosferatu tanking is not completely reliable in Revelation is because there are plenty of enemies that wield shurikens. With debuffs and weapon triangle disadvantage lowering Nosferatu hit rates and poison strike causing unavoidable chip damage, it becomes very easy to be lowered into kill range by these enemies. Fortunately, I've stumbled into a good counter in the form of Jotaro, whose certain blow skill and weapon triangle advantage with bows over shurikens allows him to take down ninjas with ease. With the Spies Yumi, I have even more flexibility and control over choke points, which I use to great effect. I fight through the majority of the enemies in this manner and open the final door to defeat Mikoto, obtaining the S-rank legendary bow pursuer, clearly the best of the Fate's legendary weapons because of its insane might and speed bonuses, despite how late you get it. However, it is invaluable because it allows you to one-round many endgame enemies, something that is normally rather difficult to do. Chapter 25 is the elevator map and one of the big hurdles in Revelation because you must reach 3 Dragon Veins and pass through several brutal ambush zones. I group everyone into one area and make my moves. The elevator has 6 slots, so I must take care to have the optimal layout. I use Kana for the Inspiration Aura, Minori the generic Anharia on Ryoji for Rally Magic and Rally Luck, Octu the generic Wyvern Lord for Rally Defense, Kristoff the generic Bow Knight for Rally Skill, and Jotaro for Firepower. The 3 ranged Spies Yumi allows me to snipe enemies safely from within the elevator, giving me more flexibility than is normally possible. I clear the middle room, then the bottom one, and then move to the top, which is the most dangerous because of Master Ninjas. Kana is bounty, so I use her as bait to lure out enemy reinforcements. And I camp at the elevator entrance with Korin to pick off enemies with my bow users. Soon, the 3 remaining named characters, Odin, Arthur, and Flora, are bountied and killed off as well, completing the KMU bounty war with a full clear for a grand KMU bingo. This is a momentous occasion. Immediately afterwards, I have Jotaro slay Sumeragi with the Pursuer, ending his wretched existence and obtaining the S-rank legendary Hagakure Blade, which is so unambiguously bad that explanation is not necessary. Chapter 26 is overall a true challenge without proper characters. This is a defeat boss map, and Gunter, the commander, starts very far away. Despite being relatively weak, he is difficult to kill immediately. I send Korin forward to Nosferatu tank the initial wave of enemies, but his insufficient damage output means that nearly all of them are left alive. The injured foes choose not to attack Korin due to what I think is actually bugged heal AI behavior. The enemies being wounded seek a healing source, and the closest ones available are ward tiles that surround Korin as part of the map gimmick, despite them only affecting allied characters. This unfortunate coincidence ends up being tactical brilliance, as Korin is completely surrounded and cannot move, completely at the mercy of every enemy on the top half of the map. Simultaneously, Viking forces target the rest of my team, which has become sufficiently depleted to the point where I'm fielding fresh level 1 characters. Despite all of my effort, only 5 or so are combat capable, and if I'm not careful, they'll all die, and I'll be doomed in the endgame, even if Korin alone survives. Jotaro is an absolute MVP and one-rounds enemies left and right with the Pursuer, and with some clever movements and blocking, I'm able to move into a better position. Korin is still completely locked down by 10 or so enemies, but luckily, an enemy Malignite lunges Korin and moves him outside of the prison, allowing me to get him free. However, the pack of nearly dead enemies still follows him, threatening another surround if I'm not careful. I move all of my forces along the right edge to support Korin, and reinforced Malignites chase me from the starting areas. I move everyone towards Gunter and prepare to end the map, and I attack with Jotaro to set up a kill for Jotaro. Gunter marvels at the generic archer's power and grants us the Bifrost staff, which can resurrect dead characters. But at this point, I can imagine that you already know why it is useless to me. Like
Chapter 27 is the penultimate map of Revelation where you must defeat a masked Tanankos, a process for which the physical inputs and decision-making from start to finish took roughly 45 seconds to execute, which is also roughly the amount of time I spent on editing this video.
I can move up here, so let's
Once
move up
the
this
match
trim.
has started, you start extremely close to Anankos, who has 80 horsepower and dragon skin, a skill which halves damage, but nothing of note offensively, meaning that he is no threat to anyone on player phase. I anticipate that I will probably need perhaps 2 or 3 units to get the kill, so I set up 3 rescue warps to attack with Korin and 2 Jitaros. However, as it turns out, Mask 10 Anankos only has 18 resistance, while Korin was unable to kill endgame enemies with Nosferatu. His cap magic in addition to a meal bonus, tonic, rally, a pair Irap, and I don't know, the power of friendship, does enough damage to exactly kill Anankos in 1 round by quadrupling him with the lightning tone with 100% reliability without any generic archer assistance. The combat animation and dialogue for this encounter takes about as long as the rest of the map, and I start spamming vine booms and other soundboard effects so I don't have to edit it anything in post-production because of my accumulated fatigue, making videos without a significant story component to the cheering jubilation and bogs of the chat members, which have by now swelled to over 400 concurrent viewers.
Yeah, I didn't math this out. It just happened. After the longest cutscene known to man, the game then segues right into the endgame, which is a proper final boss fight with 3 phases and infinite reinforcements. My army is positioned right in the center, surrounded by 8 enemies, with 2 more spawning each turn. I must whittle down the enemy forces immediately or else they threaten to overwhelm me. I focus on the left side first and send in Jitaro to slay a chunky Revelation Berserker. In 1 round, Korin takes out the Sorcerer, and I have everyone else gang up on the adventure to the south. The enemies move in and the situation gets tricky, because my army is just barely unable to clear all of the threat. I cannot allow any enemy to attack or else I risk casualties, which can potentially snowball into disaster. Additionally, I have gotten fairly attached to my generic units and I want them to live. I use everything I have at my disposal, including the Freeze Staff, Savage Blow activations, and many pair-up attacks. I am able to lock enough enemies down to remain safe. I have now stabilized and aim to take down Anankos while still fending off remaining forces. I send Korin in, and surprisingly, he is able to one-round Anankos' hands with a Lightning Tome quadruple, and I send him to the other side to do it again to the other hand. For the second form, which is Anankos' head, I attack with Korin, and I finish with a critical hit from Jitaro's Pursuer. The third and final form of Anankos emerges, and I land the final blow with a Jitaro pair-up, finally ending the Mad Dragon's reign with 0 casualties. That is, until the events of the Hidden Truths DLC occurs, and Anankos uses multi-dimensional bullshit to kill everyone off-screen. But that's a story for another day. Clearly, this entire adventure has been a lesson, and the moral of the story is that life is tremendously valuable, meaning that you should sell it for profit on the open market. This concludes the Fire Emblem Fates Revelation KMU, which was completed after a mere 8 attempts. A KMU bingo was achieved, and by the end of the game, every named character was dead, which was all made possible by viewers like you. Thank you for your generous contributions. If there's one thing that I can always appreciate about Revelation is that it offers so many ways to play the game and still poses a decent challenge. I will admit I was not expecting generics to actually be useful in Revelation, as every single previous experience I've had with them in Fates has been that they are useless garbage. I really did not expect to win on the final run going in, as I was mostly just playing it by ear, but I'm glad that it worked out. This playthrough has been a grand success, pulling in roughly twice as many donations as my birthright run, and for those of you who participated, I hope you all had a good time. Now that I've finished my second KMU, I think I'll start being a bit more experimental with my videos again. Don't expect too much change, but don't be surprised if you see some stranger videos every now and again. Anyway, if you like this series, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of work into this, so if you want to support me in this endeavor, consider becoming a YouTube member, contributing to my Patreon, or showing up the next time I stream. Thanks for watching, and see you all in the next one.